Breaking tonight, international outrage with President Trump back in the United States after his first foreign trip sent shockwaves through Europe and beyond. Good evening, I'm Sandra Smith in for Martha MacCallum, and this is a special edition of The Story, America First, Home and Abroad. Over the weekend during the G7 summit, the president appeared to make good on promises made on the campaign trail and once he was sworn into office. Mr. Trump putting allies and enemies alike on notice by bringing his America First doctrine to the world stage. But that did not sit well with some European leaders, especially German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who now says the United States is not a reliable partner to Germany and the rest of Europe. Those comments taken a step further by her foreign minister, who said earlier today that President Trump has, quote, weakened the West. In just moments, we'll be joined by Karl Rove and General Jack Keane on the impact of the America First policy overseas.
Problematic in the past. In Bush 43's presidency, we had enormous problems with Chirac. We've seen this come and go. We had an excellent relationship with Blair. We had an excellent relationship with Merkel. But these things come and go. And what the president ought to do is ignore those kind of comments. To the degree that you acknowledge them, they ought to be acknowledged privately by the State Department, the Defense Department, and acknowledged in a proactive way by emphasizing the commonality of our relationships and the common activities in which we're engaged. In a way, our relationship with NATO is stronger today than it was, say, a year or 2 years ago, part because of President Trump saying, I value this relationship enough that I want you to live up to your commitments, but also because President Obama, towards the end of his term, began to do things to strengthen our relationship. We prepositioned equipment for our Marines in NATO. In Norway. We expanded the number of troops that we sent to NATO, rotated in and out the aircraft and equipment that we rotated out, particularly in the Baltics. So, we're on a good path in many ways. Let's not let this sort of recent disagreement over language and the reaction of the European allies to his speech obscure that.
Some leaders were upset, of course, also to the lack of commitment from President Trump over the Paris Climate Agreement, for example. He delayed that decision. That's going to be a big one to watch this week. But sum it up for us, Karl. How did his first foreign trip go?
Well, look, I think it went extremely well on the front end, namely the visits in Riyadh and Jerusalem. It went okay in great visuals in Rome. It did not go as well in either the NATO meeting or the G7 meeting, and the administration ought to pay attention to those and shore those things up. The president was right in making that charge to the Europeans. You need to live up to your treaty commitment. I think it would have gone down better had he done it. It would have gone down much better in private, maybe not been as effective, but it would have gone down a little bit better if he made it publicly, if he had reaffirmed our so-called Article 5 commitment that attack on any NATO member is an attack on all. That probably would have made it a little bit better. But don't read too much into it, but look at the implications of what's playing out here and don't let it get worse.
All right, Karl Rove, thank you. Good to see you.
You bet. Thank you.
Early this morning, North Korea launched a ballistic missile test, the nation's third in just 3 weeks. The missile launch coming just one day before the Pentagon will test a defense system aimed at taking down a warhead headed to the U.S. And just yesterday, Defense Secretary James Mattis warned about what could happen if North Korea continues its escalation.
It would be a catastrophic war if this turns into combat, if we're not able to resolve this situation through diplomatic means.
Here now, General Jack Keane, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and a Fox News military analyst. General Keane, by the way, nice to see you on Memorial Day. No better way for me and Fox News viewers to spend this day than hearing from you, a real-world general. General Keane, can I get first your reaction to North Korea's activities, the third ballistic missile test in just 3 weeks? How do you view this threat?
Well, it certainly is the acceleration of these missile tests that's got everybody's attention. We already know they have nuclear weapons and attempting to miniaturize that weapon so they can affix it to a ballistic missile. So what we're relying on certainly is political, diplomatic, and economic options, which Secretary Mattis was talking about, and largely depending on the Chinese here. But the reality is that no president can accept North Korea getting ready to launch nuclear missiles at U.S. bases, our allies, or the continental United States. We could not accept that. And that's what he's talking about. What that would mean is we would launch a preemptive strike, and that would have to be fairly comprehensive to give our audience a sense of this. It would not just go at the launch facilities, but their nuclear capability, their other ballistic missiles, as much of their rocket and artillery arsenals as possible, because they're all targeting the 10 million people that live in Seoul. And then we would go to Pyongyang and take down as much regime leadership targets as we could. That would be a very comprehensive attack by the United States on North Korea to damage them as much as possible. They would come at us with everything they have left, and we would have a war with North and South Korea, the United States reinforcing South Korea, and the Chinese likely reinforcing North Korea. This would be horrific.
General,
nobody wants that.
And you go back to Mattis's words on North Korea, saying it would be catastrophic war if this turns into combat. If we are not able to resolve this through diplomatic means, what should be the next step by the United States here?
Well, we're largely relying on China. China has convinced the president that they intend to do something. Now, we have to be very clear-eyed when we're dealing with China, because it is China that tolerated North Korea to have nuclear weapons. It is China that's tolerated North Korea to test ballistic missiles, and some of those ballistic missiles look remarkably similar to the ones that China already has. So we got to go into this thing knowing that China may be gaming us a little bit here and not give us the results that we want. And if that happens, then we're going to have to be prepared to go it alone here and really slam hard on some sanctions on North Korea to see if we can get their attention. Nothing has really ever worked with these guys in the past. So that's why everyone is so concerned.
And General Keane, I want to share with our viewers the reaction or the answer that Defense Secretary James Mattis gave when asked the question, what keeps you up at night? Listen.
What keeps you awake at night?
Nothing. I keep other people awake at night.
Yeah,
no hesitation there.
That's my good friend Jim Mattis there, in the flesh and in the real. That's him. And it's really the message of the United States. And we are the most powerful country in the world. And we don't need to fear anybody. But we need to get our policies right. And this president, I believe, has begun to do that and reset the table, so to speak, for some failed policies of the past administration.
And General, again, it is an honor to speak with you on this Memorial Day when we are remembering our heroes and the fallen. And interesting, the AP doing a piece today. To many Americans, Memorial Day has lost its meaning. It's become about beaches and barbecues and the beginning of summer. And so if we could ask you what this day means for you.
Well, I don't totally agree with that. I mean, I understand that there's a small percentage of the American population serve in the military, less than 1% now. But I think people are aware of what Memorial Day is, that this is a most sacred day on the calendar, aside from religious holidays in my mind, because this is the day we set aside as a nation to remember those who gave up their lives for this great nation of ours. And I know the soldiers that I've lost, I know for a fact they didn't want to die. But the truth is, they were willing to. And that's what separates them from most of America and why we honor them so much. I mean, I've been in awe of this all my life, Sandra. They're willing to put everything that they care about at life at risk. The opportunity to have a full life, to have a long life, to be a parent, the opportunity to have love in their lives, to love and to be loved. They put all of that at risk. And why do they do that? I think there's two reasons. One, they first do it for one another. And then the second thing is that they do it out of an act of simple yet profound sense of duty. And I believe this is true honor. And we in America will never take it for granted. We will never take their kind of devotion for granted. And so we always will honor them on this special day, as our president did today, and people in communities all over America did as well.
A true honor to speak with you, sir. And we remember all those fallen tonight. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, well, tonight, new efforts from Democrats to recruit veterans to run for office in the hopes of wresting back control of Congress in 2018. One former Navy SEAL says the military and the DNC have nothing in common, calling the effort, quote, a waste of time. That debate ahead. Plus, President Trump standing by his son-in-law Jared Kushner after reports he requested a back channel to communicate with the Russians late last year, as Democrats call for his security clearance to be revoked. We have new reporting tonight that shines a whole new light on this.
These revelations about Jared Kushner trying to set up some kind of back channel to the Kremlin through the Russian ambassador. Your reaction to that? Is there anything improper with that?
Breaking tonight, new fallout after multiple reports suggest that senior White House advisor Jared Kushner attempted to develop communications with the Russians through back-channel efforts late last year. Democrats quickly seized on the reports, while Republicans in the White House are standing by Mr. Trump's son-in-law. Watch.
I think any channel of communication, back or otherwise, with a country like Russia is a good thing.
I think talking with him directly and getting him to answer any and all questions, as he said he would do, would probably be the prudent course of action.
Trying to establish a back channel with the Russians through a Russian diplomatic facility, you have to ask, well, who are they hiding the conversations from?
But tonight, Fox News learning new developments about just who initiated the contact in question. For that part of the story, we go to Kristen Fisher from the White House with the latest. Kristen?
Sandra, President Trump is defending his son-in-law, telling the New York Times that he still has total confidence in Jared Kushner. The Homeland Security Secretary is also defending him, saying that even if Kushner did try to set up a secret communications channel with the Kremlin, that it's normal and not that big a deal. Well, tonight, Republican Senator John McCain said he doesn't see it that way.
My view of it is I don't like it. I just don't. I know that some administration officials are saying, well, that's standard procedure. I don't think it's standard procedure prior to the inauguration of a president of the United States by someone who is not in an appointed position.
Fox's Catherine Herridge is reporting a source close to Kushner says it was the Russians who first raised the issue of a secret communications channel with the Kremlin, not Kushner, and that it was only discussed for a single call about Syria, not as a permanent back channel, as the Washington Post, which broke the story, alleged. Even Senator Lindsey Graham, who doesn't always agree with this administration, says the whole storyline seems suspicious.
I don't trust this story as far as I can throw it. I think it makes no sense that the Russian ambassador would report back to Moscow on a channel that he most likely knows we're monitoring.
True or not, the negative press is casting a shadow over the senior advisor once thought to be untouchable. Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is now calling for Kushner's security clearance to be reviewed. He also wants him to testify before the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Schiff says he fully expects that to happen. And tonight, a source close to Kushner says he, too, is eager to share his side of the story with Congress.
All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you. Joining me now for more, Katrina Pearson. She served as the Trump campaign's national spokesperson, and Pablo Manriquez is a Democratic strategist and co-founder of K Street Media. Good to have both of you here tonight.
Good to be here, Sandra.
Katrina, I'll start with you first. The president, the White House, making it very clear at this point that the president stands behind his son-in-law.
Well, Sandra, there's really no reason not to. I mean, we are simply talking about a story, but there is no story. Even the New York Times article in the third paragraph says it was unclear who made this suggestion, even leaking to the Washington Post story. Homeland Security John Kelly said he didn't even have a problem with the allegation. There was nothing illegal reported out of this meeting, and yet we're talking about this as if something bad happened, like maybe 4 Americans that were killed in Benghazi, or maybe sending $1 billion to Iran to fund global terrorism. Are we seriously still talking about the Russians here?
I mean, Pablo, you just heard all the reporting out of Fox tonight, and there's no proof of any illegal activity. There is no crime, as Charles Krauthammer said multiple times in the last hour. But still, Democrats, even at this hour, calling for his security clearance to be revoked?
Absolutely. I mean, Charles Krauthammer is actually incorrect, and I know that doesn't happen very much, and I have a lot of respect for the man. But when you go for a security clearance, they ask you, list different members of different governments who you might have been in contact with. It's important that we know who you've been talking to so that we know who might want to leverage that against you when you're working in the highest reaches of power in the White House. Now, Jared Kushner did not disclose that he had had this meeting when he had to. And if I'm Jared Kushner right now, I'm thinking to myself, why would I mean, the American people deserve to know why he didn't disclose it. But it's like, come on, guys. I mean, this is why this president is having so much trouble getting anything done, is because he gets bogged down in the mud of his own sort of mistakes. I think that ultimately the only thing that's going to fix this is a big shakeup at the top of the White House.
What's severely underreported, though, Sandra, is that Jared Kushner was the first person to say that I will go in and I will talk to any of the committees that are investigating this ridiculous allegation. He has never kept anything secret. He said he'll meet with anyone, anytime, for however long it takes to clear up this mess. He is the one person that has said that. Not everyone else has been able to do that. Hillary Clinton was under a criminal FBI probe. Where were the Democrats then asking for subpoenas and asking for intel committees?
So, Katrina, let me ask you
about national security.
Do we see any changes at the White House this week? Of course, the president was attending Memorial Day services today. Everybody goes back to work tomorrow. Amid all these reports of a possible White House shakeup, geez, haven't heard that one before. But will there be any changes, any structural changes? Reports that they're asking Kushner to stand down in the wake of all this. The president's upset about that. And by the way, I'm going to point out to you reports tonight that Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie were seen leaving the White House after West Wing meetings. I don't know, Katrina, is the band getting back together?
Well, only one person has the answer to that question, Sandra, and it is President Trump. Of course he would bring in people that were with him from the beginning. I've always said if you weren't with Mr. Trump prior to the Indiana primary, then you're probably not on his team. And I think there should be a shakeup at the White House, starting at the very top, because what's happening today, especially with all of these leaks, no one's been held accountable, and that's the chief of staff responsibility, and I believe that needs to be addressed.
All right, so this week, could we see some changes, Pablo?
I think so. I think that this week they're going to roll out Katrina Pearson as the new White House press secretary. Katrina, I wrote last year that you were one of the most powerful women in American media for the role that you had on President Trump's campaign. So I think that, and again, as a website, or as a White House rather, that's been having a lot of headaches from its current staff, I'm sure that you would bring a calmness to the role that it doesn't currently have.
Okay, I'll let Katrina respond to that.
we will fully always be there to protect and defend Donald Trump, because what we know, unlike everyone else, is that all he wants to do is make America great again.
All right, and that's
MAGA.
Okay. All right, thanks to both of you for being here tonight. Good to see you both. All right, well, one media outlet taking the time this Memorial Day to hit the Marine Corps over attitudes towards female troops. We bring you the debate over an ill-timed article. Plus, as we approach the summer months, renewed focus on President Trump's domestic agenda. Where do Republicans stand with top-ticket items like health care and tax reform? Can we expect movement before the August recess? We discuss ahead.
So we want to get back and keep on the track that we're on, because the track that we're on is record-setting.
Welcome back to this special edition of The Story, America First, Home and Abroad. So the clock is ticking as Republicans work to provide some legislative victories ahead of an August recess and the president's next major mile marker, his 200th day. Back on U.S. soil after 9 days abroad, the Trump administration looking to get domestic, looking to its top two priorities, health care and tax reform, goals they have been eyeing for a while now.
When we go for all of the things that we've been pushing so hard and so successfully, including health care, because Obamacare is collapsing. It's dead. It's gone. We need to cut taxes. We're going to cut taxes, and that's what I want. It's going to bring back companies. It's going to bring back jobs. So we want to get back and keep on the track that we're on, because the track that we're on is record-setting. And that's what we want to do, is we want to break very positive records.
Doug McKelway has the details of what lies ahead, including the budget fights, live from Washington. Hey, Doug.
Hi, Sandra. President Trump has now returned to that domestic agenda, which remains gridlocked in a dysfunctional Washington. His legislative priorities attacked relentlessly by Democrats, by Republican disunity, and by his own penchant for tweeting. It continued last night with this tweet, quote, suggests that we add more dollars to health care and make it the best anywhere. Obamacare is dead. The Republicans will do much better. But that's not the message President Trump often conveyed when he wanted to cut health care costs, and not the message his party is still conveying. Republicans also remain divided over the president's budget. The chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee noting that Mr. Trump's long-held promise of rebuilding the military falls short.
It does not rebuild the military. It doesn't give us the ships and the numbers of personnel we need, the capabilities we need.
Meanwhile, Democrats are hammering the budget from the other side.
I do not believe you make America great again by cutting medical research to the lowest level in 12 years. I don't think you make America great again by saying to working families it's now more expensive for your kids to borrow money for student loans. You certainly don't make us a great nation by cutting back in infrastructure. All those three things are in the Trump budget.
And last week, when a Democratic member of Congress accused Budget Director Mick Mulvaney of crafting a budget that is, quote, morally bankrupt, Mulvaney fired right back.
Because right now, my unborn grandchildren are paying for it, and I think that is morally bankrupt.
Congress has little time to tackle all of these big-ticket items. It has this week off, another week off for the 4th of July, and a 6-week August recess ending September 4th, with only weeks to go before the fiscal year ends after that. Senator?
All right, Doug McCallum, thank you. Joining me now, Representative Sean Duffy of Wisconsin and Isaac Wright, who is a Democratic strategist. Good to see you both.
Good to be here. How you doing?
All right, Congressman, I'm going to start with you first. As Doug McCallum just laid out, gridlock over President Trump's domestic agenda. Is that fair?
Well, not really. We're moving at the pace of government, which is not lightning speed. We have to give credit where credit is due. The House passed a health care package, sent it over to the Senate. They're working on that right now. Next week, in 2 weeks from now, we're going to bring up our repeal and replace of Dodd-Frank, going to come off the House floor and go to the Senate. We're still working on tax reform. So, yeah, the agenda is moving forward. The problem we have, Sandra, is a lot of this stuff is going to get to the Senate where they have these filibuster rules. We need 60 votes or 8 Democrats to pass any of these bills, and that's going to be incredibly tough. I think the Senate has to fix that rule, grease the skids, go with a simple majority like the House so we can start to move the Republican, the Trump agenda forward.
Your point is taken about government moving slowly, but Isaac, I'll point out that by this time in 2001, Bush's tax cuts had passed both in the House and the Senate. Are Republicans running out of time here?
That's exactly right. As it's been noted widely and openly, President Trump had the worst 100 days of any modern administration in the last 50, 60 years. And the same is going to be true for the last 200 days as that anniversary comes up shortly upon us. And part of the problem is the policies at stake. It's not the rules, as the congressman mentioned. I think the problem is these are unpopular policies that are damaging to America.
All right, Congressman, you obviously have to respond to that.
I do. So think back to the first 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency. They were able to jam through because they had 60 votes in the Senate, health care, Dodd-Frank, a stimulus bill. America hated it. So Republicans, in response, have cleaned house in our state governments and in the federal government. America wants Republicans to lead. They want us to fix health care. They want us to fix our budget. They want to fix the tax code. We can't do that because Democrats have this block in the Senate. We need to open this up. Listen, it only takes 51 votes to change the rules of the Senate. Republicans can do this. Get rid of the filibuster rule. Let's start moving legislation forward instead of the House trying to contort itself to try to deal with Senate rules.
Right,
it's not working for the American people. It's not moving the agenda forward.
I didn't hear one word from the congressman's mouth defending these policies. For example, the proposed Trump budget that he's about to vote on would cut the EPA by 31%. That means $51 million for his state of Wisconsin and the Department of Natural Resources there that's used to test for things like lead in the water.
Let's go back, Congressman, to the two major agenda items, obviously health care and tax reform. How important, or I should first ask if we're going to even see movement before the August recess, but let's talk tax reform. How important is it for this administration to get something done on tax reform by the end of the year?
Listen, it's incredibly important. I mean, you start to grow the economy by making sure you reform the taxes and make America competitive again. Because of the funky rules in the Senate, we have to do health care first. Once health care is done, we use the savings off the Obamacare taxes to start moving down the tax levers of tax reform. And so I think it's important we can get it done, but it's going to be complicated. In regard to the EPA and the Trump budget, I give a slow clap to the president. The EPA is standing in the way of progress in small businesses and innovation and creativity. Let's start cutting that budget and making sure they get back to the business of keeping our water and our air
That's
safe.
$51 million
Isaac, last word to you.
money that tests for lead in the water of your constituents. It's money that tests for the lead in the water of constituents from the Department of Natural Resources.
All right, so Isaac, how will this president be judged? Let's just go by end of year here. These two major agenda items, there obviously is a bit of gridlock on these issues. Is he being judged too harshly?
Well, we see problems on the tax proposal, namely the fact that it's awfully geared to the top wealthiest 1%, who would see something like a 14% increase in their after-tax income. Middle-class families, the rest of us, the other 99% of America, would see 1.2 to 1.8% bump compared to 14%.
Well, we obviously do know, as far as those corporate tax cuts are concerned, small businesses and big corporations alike are welcoming them with open arms. All right, I've got to leave it there. Congressman,
Sandra,
5 seconds.
One quick point. Corporate tax reform, even Democrats agree with that. We want to stop inversions where American businesses leave our country and go to other countries with better tax codes. Isaac's wrong on that. Democrats agree with us. Let's get tax reform done.
Thank you for the debate. I got to leave it there, guys. Thank you. As President Trump marks his first Memorial Day as Commander-in-Chief, we'll bring you some of the scenes from his visit to Arlington National Cemetery earlier today. Plus, Democrats still reeling from major 2016 congressional losses, hatching a new plan to take back the House in 2018. And fitting on this day, it involves our nation's veterans. How will the GOP counter this move? Carl Higbie and Robin Bureau debate next. All right, well, developing tonight a new strategy from Democrats to wrestle congressional control back from the GOP in next year's midterms. The party, still struggling to unify, is now turning to military veterans to join its 2018 ticket. Democrats say a candidate with a military background appeals to independent voters, a key factor in taking back the White House. Here now to debate those efforts, former Navy SEAL and Trump supporter Carl Higbie and Robin Bureau, former Army Ranger and a Democratic strategist. I'll start with you first, Robin. What is this new effort by Democrats to recruit veterans? Tell us about it.
You know, honestly, this is nothing new. Veterans have always been embraced by the Democratic Party. We pride ourselves on being the big tent party. We've always welcomed people of all races, religions, sexual orientations. Like I said, we're the big tent party, and that includes veterans. We have huge veterans outreach. I'll tell you that Hillary Clinton actually had more veterans on her Facebook page than did Donald Trump. So she had a huge outreach.
Okay, but there does seem to be a concerted effort in this case, though.
There should be, and you're right, there should be, because anybody who, well, let me tell you this right now, the highest respected organization right now in the United States country is the Department of Defense. It used to be the FBI, but I think they've now recently fallen out of favor somewhat because of recent turmoil. So that does make sense, and I agree with you, you're correct, that these get more moderate voters, they get more independent voters, so this is a very smart move. I myself come from the Army branch of service, where our Army values are loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Who would not want that in an elected official?
All right, but Carl, what we do know is that Democrats are meeting with military vets, trying to recruit them in hopes that this is a good strategy for them for 2018. To this, you say what?
Well, I think that, you know, he mentioned all those qualities, but I don't think that's of the Democratic Party. I mean, you have Tom Perez using profanity in front of 8-year-old children. I think long time we've seen that the Republican Party recruits vast numbers of the military branch, almost 80%. And sure, I followed the Hillary Clinton page because I wanted to know what the hell she was doing. But if you're a military veteran out there right now, you can go to greatusproject.com, and I will help you unseat some of these Democrats that are trying to take seats away from Republicans.
So to that point, Carl, I'll stay with you. How is the GOP going to combat this strategy on the part of Democrats?
Well, I think this is something that I think the Republicans have actually taken for granted, is the fact that Republicans will just always, attract the veteran community. But the fact is, we do need to continue to, and that's why I've reached out and started to recruit veterans right now, because we are trying to get them to run, and obviously they do make great candidates because they fought for their country. We want to keep them going. I think the morals of the military service coincide perfectly with our constitutional democracy. And sorry, go ahead.
And Robin, it does appear that this is yet another strategy that Democrats are trying to employ because they are still reeling from the 2016 losses.
Absolutely. I don't dispute that. We are looking for ways to organize and prepare for 2018 and 2020. And an obvious one is to go to our veteran community, because they embody these values. And a lot of us still have security
So what is
clearances.
the response that you're getting?
The response that full speed ahead with veterans and their service. If they've been honorably discharged, full speed ahead. We are ready to work with you. I myself am political director for the Fulton County Democratic Party, and we are actively recruiting veterans who have honorably served, and we honor their service. I want at this point to recognize my airborne ranger in the sky, Sergeant First Class David McDowell, who died on his 7th combat mission in Afghanistan at 30 years old. So I just wanted to do that on Memorial Day. It's important to me. But, the Democratic Party, like I said, this patriotism doesn't know a party.
Right.
We are both very patriotic parties.
Well, thank you, and we will remember him. We've got to leave it there. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
As Americans observe this solemn day, one left-wing website using it as an opportunity to disparage an entire branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. We'll explain just ahead.
No one knows where it comes from. Why some have it, and some don't. It's the fighting spirit, and it needs to be fed.
That's a new recruiting ad from the U.S. Marine Corps, and the first of its kind, focusing on a female Marine in combat. It comes as the Corps faces new scrutiny over alleged sexism within its ranks. And today, on Memorial Day, a liberal website decided this was the appropriate day to shine a spotlight on the issue, tweeting, "The Marine Corps has a toxic masculinity problem." Guy Benson is a political editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Guy, it just seems incredibly insensitive to have this article and then publish it on Memorial Day, a day where we're honoring our fallen heroes, many of them coming from the Marine Corps.
Yeah. So, look, I come at this as a layperson and a civilian. I've never served in the military, nor has anyone in my immediate family. But we're all so thankful, especially on a day like today, to those who have and who continue to do so. As a journalist, I have no problem with scrutiny or criticism of any institution in America. That's how we do things in this country, including the U.S. Marine Corps, which overall is just so revered and for very good reason. For me, though, it's not a beef with the fact that Vox, which is the website, would ever criticize the Marine Corps. It's the timing. We in America have one day out of 365 every year where we set it aside to remember with gratitude the people who have died in our military defending our freedom. And to tee up this story for this day is, I understand why people are really objecting.
General Jack Keane was on at the top of the hour, said this is the most sacred holiday in America other than religious holidays.
I think that's a very fair assessment, because we're a country that is so blessed that we're protected by a tiny fraction of our population. Only about 7% of all Americans alive today ever served in the military. And the number who are active duty today is a fraction of that. So we get to enjoy this freedom 365 days a year because of very few people, some of whom give the ultimate sacrifice. We devote this day to them and their memory. And I think to go with this story and run it with this timing, I question that.
Not to mention, it's pointing out problems that the Marine Corps knows it has and is addressing currently, arguably could address more, and that is a continual debate. But even today, women make up only 8.3% of the Corps. That is acknowledged. That is a constant debate. So to release this article that doesn't actually break any news or bring any new information, it's simply analyzing what we already knew. it's even more insensitive.
Yeah, no one's going to defend, for example, the nude photo scandal where you have about 30 U.S. Marines under court-martial. Those are bad apples and hardly representative of the Marine Corps as a whole. But to your point, it's not like the Marines have no idea that this might be a challenge. That's the whole point of the ad. The ad is to try to recruit more qualified women. And so that also seems like an odd hook for a piece attacking the Marines, because the hook is this ad.
Yeah, and the article explains itself basically and all that. But the battle is on female troops. Obviously, the article we're clearly stating is ill-timed. We're in agreement on that. Guy Benson, it's good to see you today.
Good to see you.
All right, thanks for being here. Well, up next, the story of a little boy who stole our hearts, and it would seem the president's as well this Memorial Day.
The time that stands out in my head when I felt most proud to be an American was in 2001. I was deployed with SEAL Team 2, and we were overseas in Europe, a lot of stuff in Kosovo, a peacekeeping mission, a different type of conflict where we had lost SEALs when 9/11 happened, and we were at a point where we didn't know if they were going to send us now to Afghanistan to a new war or just send us back home as part of our rotation. They ended up flying us to Virginia Beach, and when we landed and driving down the streets there, being back in America for the first time, seeing the flags on every house, on every street, down Independence Boulevard, Shore Drive, and that's when I realized that I'm going to re-enlist and fight for this country.
Share your pride on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.